Directors. Glad you are all here with us today. We are going to start with a Pledge of Allegiance, and I'm going to ask Michael Saragosa to lead us in the pledge, please. You all join us. I don't know if Michael is on mute.
I went through the whole thing. I'll start again. Ready, salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Michael. I appreciate that. And we will begin with a roll call. So Lynette, if you could please take the roll call.
Great, thank you. Before I get started, just wanted to remind everyone again about concerns about background noise. If you can just mute your device when you're not speaking, that would be great. And if you'd like to make a comment during the meeting for our board members, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom. Okay, Director Baines.
Present.
Bernasconi.
Here.
Bradford.
Here.
Branscombe. Absent. Boulahan.
Here.
Burris.
Here.
Clark Craig.
Here.
Desmond.
Here.
Frericks.
Here.
Frost.
Here.
Gallardo.
Here.
Gog. Absent. Guerrero. Absent. Boomgarden for Harris.
Here.
Joyner.
Here.
Kennedy.
Here.
Kozlowski.
Here.
Lozano. I see that Director Lozano is here. He just might be muted, so I'll mark him present for the record. Middleton.
Here.
New.
Here.
Sander.
Here.
Saragosa.
Here.
Saylor.
Here.
Chenier.
Here.
Spokley.
Here.
Stallard.
Here.
Soon.
Here.
Thomas.
Here.
West.
Here.
Vice Chair Jennings.
Here.
Chair Gore.
Here.
And ex officio member Benny Paul. Absent. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, before we get started with our presentation, I just wanted to make a note about upcoming meetings. I think we've all heard by now the governor announced that that the executive order waiving requirements under the Brown Act will end on September 30th. And based on the feedback we've received from you all, there's a desire for in-person meetings. So we're going to start in-person meetings starting with the August 30th and September 2nd committee meetings. And then we're also going to start testing between September and December if hybrid board meetings are feasible and what works best for the organization long-term. So staff is setting up the technology to allow for hybrid and remote in-person participation starting with the September board meeting. So that meeting in September will be in person. For those of us who can come in person, we'd love to have you there. And then there'll be more information about how our hybrid meetings will work. And staff's going to send out a survey to board members in August to find out what people prefer, especially in regards to remote participation and how that might work with the executive order ending. I know that a lot of us want, and we're hoping the legislature will make some changes to the Brown Act, but we also have to wait to see what happens there. So we have to continue to figure out how to make this work for everyone as we move forward. So with that, we are going to start with our presentation. And this is the Youth Leadership Academy graduation. And I will turn this over to Rosie Ramos.
Chair Gore, I'm going to share my screen real quick. Okay. Okay. And all right. Well, good morning. I think everyone can see my screen. Okay. All right. Good morning. Thank you. My name is Rosie Ramos, and I am the project manager for the Youth Leadership Academy. And I'm very happy to be here today and celebrate another successful year for the program. I'll start off by giving you a brief overview of the last 6 months. I'll show you a short video, and then I will hand it off to my very special guest, Skylar Harris, who is a peer coordinator and a 2-year member of the program. So I want to start off with thanking our sponsors who have, I think my screen, sorry. Thanking our sponsors who have made the last 3 years possible. Without their support, we definitely would have not been able, I'm sorry, my PowerPoint is acting up just a bit. Okay, there's our sponsors. So their general contributions to the program and the virtual nature that we've had to do for the last 2 years has made the last 3 years possible. And of course, a special thanks to our peer coordinators that have helped shape and facilitate the program. And many thanks to our partners at Pro Youth and Families, especially Jasmine Luna, who has been my co-facilitator these last 6 months. This is our 3rd year for the program. And we have now had over 130 students from across the region participate in YLA. And this year we started with 110 applicants, and we accepted 49 students along with 10 returning peer coordinators. Our peer coordinators have been instrumental in helping us run the program, develop workshops, and help facilitation with students and guest speakers. We've had 10 different workshops this year that have focused on the functions of SACOG, principles and history of transportation and land use planning, local government processes, and community advocacy. And through the workshops, we've welcomed various speakers, including SACOG staff, where we talked about housing and leadership development. We've had the Chief Deputy Director of the California Transportation Commission give us a state lens for transportation planning, and we've had workshops on planning and active transportation. And of course, we've also been joined by our very own SACOG directors. This year was completely virtual due to the ongoing pandemic, but students still showed up every other Saturday morning on Zoom at 10 a.m. and had great conversations and were ready to engage and learn. Students have taken their learnings and combined it with their own personal experiences and interests to work on final projects that they have identified issues in their communities that they want to address. And these final projects will be presented started tomorrow and next Friday from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. And you are all invited to join us. So if you're interested and haven't had a chance to email me, please do so and I can send you the details. So this year has shown that a successful fully remote program can be implemented. And in fact, it makes it easier for students across the region to access the program. So we've heard from our students that this is actually a preferred method. And so this summer, staff will be working on developing a hybrid approach for next year to combine virtual and in-person sessions. And one final note that I want to share with you today is that our students are hungry for more hands-on opportunities. They work on the issues that they care about. They want to know about the projects that SACOG is working on. They want to know about the projects that their cities and counties have at the table, and they want to provide feedback on policy issues. They're ready. So SACOG staff is committed to making this a reality, and we will be working on finding opportunities to make this happen. And so apologies for my PowerPoint, but I am now going to share a quick video, and then I will hand it off to Skylar after that.
This is one of the really few platforms or places that students can get involved.
Before this program, I didn't really know how to use my voice as a youth in the community or even to make a change. So that's what I really learned from being in YLA.
For me, what I like the most about YLA is how I got to learn about different topics that I wouldn't normally learn about.
Participate in those decisions so that we can make better decisions with you rather than for you.
About implying there's no right or wrong answer. It's all our ideas impact each other.
Some people got to decide how the community would be shaped, and the rest of us got to live with the consequences of those decisions.
It was established in 1889. When did poverty come? Poverty came when the highway was built.
People respond to the environment that they have. Transportation is related to housing, it's related to food access, it's related to the social determinants of health that are going to impact you depending on the zip code that you live in.
There is no one size solution, everyone's voice has power and everyone is deserving to be heard.
How has COVID affected transportation?
How does equitable transportation look like, and how can we get there?
So what's the biggest inequity that you noticed when you started working in the planning community?
Do you think that over time the career field for tackling environmental justice will grow?
The Sacramento area, but how can that be expanded?
Is there a risk, right, that there'll be less transportation funding that will hurt the whole state overall?
What is one of the biggest struggles that you found in your field when it comes to trying to create justice for health equity?
So how can we stop deforestation?
How do you feel about improving that aspect of climate change?
What do you think has led to the insufficient building of homes over the past years?
What do you think is the best type of housing type?
But one of the main critiques was that it would interfere with Native and Indigenous people land.
It's a lot to process, but it's really important to just do your research.
Who you think is most responsible for making these changes?
Love the conversation that we were having right now, and I want to kind of keep it going just a little bit longer. What advice do you have for the youth of color who might face these challenges in the future?
You can shape the future.
Own your greatness.
Leadership is something that you can bring in every step.
As young people, just wherever you go, whatever you do, always make sure that you are listening to the community and you are working with the community that you serve.
You realize how strong you are by sharing your ideas.
Follow your heart and do what you think is right.
I will effectuate change.
Okay. I will pass it on now to Skylar.
Hello, my name is Skylar, and this is my second year at YLA. And I really learned about YLA through a program called College Track that got me into it at freshman year, and I'm about to be a junior. And it was very interesting because I'll always say this: the first day was always the hilarious day, because I was always shaky and I was always very anxious. But as soon as I got there, I kind of felt like family in a way, because I went home with a big, huge box of Chipotle. So I just knew this was the right place. And one of the biggest lessons that I learned personally was that my voice matters, and that I can utilize it in many various ways to help our own community. And YLA was, I didn't really have an expectation for YLA. I was just, like I said before, I think it was more the nervousness that was starting to cloud my mind. But when I saw this program, I really understood how well that and how I could really be beneficial in the program and really grow as a person. And I would say that I would recommend this program to other students, because this is my second year, and every time I join it, I feel like I learned something new. It's all ever-growing process of learning and using this data we find to make a difference in the world. And then I think I want the board members to know that it takes action, not only words, to be able to make a change, because we always talk about these issues, but I feel like once we put the hard work into it, especially from the youth who can have a head start on it, because I think either way, the youth is going to either fix the mistakes we make or you guys make, or they are going to reshape the way we think as a society. And I think that's very important.
Thank you, Skylar. Happy to take any questions. I'm sure Skylar can take questions. I know we don't have a lot of time, but thank you. We're excited to close out another year, and we look forward to more work with our young leaders.
Thank you so much, Rosie, and thank you, Skylar. Really appreciate you coming to share with us. It's evident that this program is doing what it's intended to do, and we're pleased that you've been able to participate, and we look forward to another exciting year, and really glad that the virtual format worked out. I know it was a concern, but hats off to you, Rosie, for your hard work. Thank you so much for your time in our youth.
Absolutely.
So a nice round of applause from everybody. I'm sure the board members are talking hands, which they are. So thank you so much, Skylar and Rosie. And I will look forward to the presentations tomorrow evening, and hopefully you all can join either tomorrow evening, Friday night, or the following Friday night on the 25th. All right.
Yeah, Chair, if I could just say a quick word.
Yes, please do.
Thanks. I appreciate that. Skylar, you did a great job representing your colleagues in the program. So thanks very much. And we all wish you well. And a huge shout out to Rosie and the staff for continuing to make this happen. When you start programs like this, you always worry about the sustainability, particularly if you've done the work up front, but what happens when you're not there anymore? And I just so appreciate that SACOG has kind of taken this and embedded it into the work that they do. And it improves every year in so many ways. So just a big shout out to James and Kirk and all the staff, Monica, who helped support Rosie on this. You've done a fabulous job. We really appreciate it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Director Chenier. All right, we are going to now adjourn as our SACOG board and convene as the CVR SAFE board. Lynette, would you please update the roll to include any members attending from CVR SAFE?
Thanks, Chair Gore. I don't see Director Nguyen or Young here, but I did want to note for the record that Director Guerrero is on the line. So I'll note her participation. And then also just for the record, wanted to let you know that I do not have any public communications.
I missed public communication. All right.
That's okay. Just wanted to make sure we registered that.
I appreciate that. So the CVR SAFE agenda contains the following consent items: to approve the minutes of the May 2021 meeting and approve the final fiscal year 2021 budget. Does anyone wish to discuss a number of these items? And I don't think we have any public comment, correct, Lynette?
Sorry, no public comment.
We will go ahead, and if I can have a motion and a second, please.
Through the chair, Supervisor Baines, I move to approve the consent calendar.
Thank you. Second soon, all right, and we'll have roll call, please.
There's Pierre New has his hand raised.
Thank you.
Thank you. I was just raising my hand to second the motion. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We'll take roll call. Go ahead, Lynette.
Thank you. Director Baines?
Aye.
Bernasconi?
Aye.
Bradford?
Aye.
Branscombe? Absent. Bulahan?
Aye.
Burris?
Aye.
Clark Kretz?
Aye.
Desmond?
Aye.
Frericks?
Aye.
Frost?
Aye.
Gallardo?
Aye.
Gog? Absent. Guerrero?
Aye.
Boomgarden for Harris?
Aye.
Joyner?
Aye.
Kennedy? Director Kennedy, could you indicate your vote? I'll come back to him. Kozlowski?
Yes.
Lozano? Director Lozano, could you indicate your vote? I'll come back to him too. Middleton?
Aye.
New?
Aye.
Sander?
Aye.
Zaragoza?
Aye.
Saylor?
Aye.
Chenier?
Aye.
Folkley?
Yes.
Stallard?
Yes.
Soon?
Aye.
Thomas?
Aye.
West?
Aye.
Vice Chair Jennings?
Aye.
Chair Gore? And Director Kennedy, if you're there, could you register your vote?
Thank you. Aye.
Thank you. And Director Lozano, if you're there, can you register your vote? Okay, I'll mark you absent for this item, but the motion carries.
Thank you very much. All right, we will now adjourn as the CVR SAFE and reconvene as SACOG. And now is time for public communication. This is the opportunity for anyone to address the board on an item that is not on our agenda. Do we have any written comments, Lynette, or anybody in the would like to make a comment?
No public communication.
All right, thank you. So we'll move on to the consent agenda. And these items are intended to be approved with one motion. Does anybody want to remove an item from the consent agenda?
Move to approve the consent agenda.
All right.
Second.
That was Director, was that
Gog.
Gog? Thank you, Director Gog. And the second was?
Ballard.
Guerrero, sorry.
Guerrero, thank you very much. All right.
Director Frost, I believe, has a question, Madam Chair.
Thank you, appreciate it. It's helpful to have help. So Director Frost, please.
Thank you. I don't want to pull anything. I just wanted to ask a quick question regarding item number 4. I don't know if you wanted to read the item to our clerk.
Would you read that item, Lynette? So I don't have it right in front of me. And
Sure. Item number 4 is approved delegation of authority for supplemental active transportation program funding.
So my question, I know there's a lot going on at the state and there's potential that we're going to have a lot more transportation funding coming. And I was wondering if SACOG has already prioritized, if SACOG is already prioritized projects that would slip in, and would those projects that happen to be maybe second phase take precedent, or what is the what is your rationale? I'm obviously going to support being able to move quickly. I just wanted to kind of see what we're doing on our end to prepare for those quick decisions, and what projects you might see. I know that Sacramento County has a couple projects that did not get funded, so, and I'm sure others do too. So I was just curious to know about that.
thank you, Director Frost. James or somebody from the transportation side want to field that question?
Yeah, I'd be happy to field that question, Chair Gore. You're right. Obviously, Director Frost, there's a lot of moving parts. You're going to hear a little bit later about the Green Means Go opportunity in the state budget. And I think, as you all know, this is not the final state budget, right? So that is the twist, among others. But for this program in particular, for active transportation, ATP, what it looks like where the state is heading is to put an infusion of funding infusion to ATP and allow us to move down the list that we have already ranked in ATP. They want that potentially by the CTC meeting that will happen before the August board meeting of SACOG, hence the delegation of this authority. So we're not doing any new ranking or new evaluation. It literally is moving down the list. And this item is so that you give us that authority to put that in front of the CTC for this bicycle pedestrian active transportation funding. Is that clear?
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it, James.
Thank you very much. Any other questions on the items for the consent agenda? All right, then let's go ahead and take a roll call, please.
Thank you. Director Baines?
Aye.
Bernasconi?
Aye.
Bradford?
Aye.
Branscombe absent. Boulahan?
Aye.
Burris?
Aye.
Clark-Kretz?
Aye.
Desmond?
Aye.
Frericks?
Aye.
Frost?
Aye.
Gallardo?
Aye.
Gog?
Yes.
Guerrero? Aye.
Baumgarten for Harris?
Aye.
Joyner?
Aye.
Kennedy?
Aye.
Kozlowski?
Yes.
Lozano? I'll note for the record he is here, but he might just be having technical difficulties. I'll mark him absent. Middleton?
Aye.
New?
Aye.
Sander?
Aye.
Saragosa?
Aye.
Saylor?
Aye.
Chenier?
Aye.
Spokley?
Yes.
Stallard?
Yes.
Soon?
Aye.
Thomas?
Aye.
West?
Aye.
Vice Chair Jennings,
Aye.
Chair Gore.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you. All right, it is item 11, our first action item, and this is the Regional Early Planning Action Planning Competitive Grant Award recommendations. Jennifer Hargrove will present the item.
Morning, Jennifer Hargrove of your SACOG staff. I'm going to start sharing my screen, and I'll be using presentation number 1 from our agenda page. Let's get this going. Okay, so today I am requesting that the board approve the staff recommendation for the Regional Early Action Planning Program, the competitive grant program, the project awards. Earlier this month, the Land Use and Natural Resource Committee also recommended that the board approve this item. I'll go over the application process and the award recommendations, but I will start with a quick refresh about the overall REAP program. Back in 2019, the state budget and Assembly Bill 101 created the REAP program. It's a program, they did a lot of things, but one of the things they did was create the REAP program. And that is a program for regional agencies like SACOG and our peers across the state to receive one-time funding for housing planning. SACOG has been allocated just under $6.8 million in total. And this money is coming to us through HCD, the State Department of Housing and Community Development. Overall, the state's goal for the funding is that it's used to accelerate housing production through planning. So as we thought at SACOG how we best utilize these funds, we brought forward frameworks to the Land Use Committee and then to the full board over a year ago, and it started with these guiding principles. Of course, we support the state's goal to accelerate housing, but we also want to support our MTPSCS goals specifically. So we want to specifically support an increase in housing production overall, but also in housing product choice and housing in our infill areas. Because it's one-time funding, we also wanted to demonstrate to the state how we as a region could be innovative and leverage this funding with our other efforts, such as Green Means Go. I'll be circling back to that in just a moment, because that's exactly what we did with the competitive grant program that we'll be discussing today. But first, I do want to finish up a bit on the background of REAP before we get into the competitive program. In March and June of last year, in 2020, the board took 2 actions to approve 2 frameworks. Together, they outline how we will spend our full $6.7 million in REAP funds. This slide shows at a very high level that allocation and the major program areas, how we've allocated the funding. Most of the pieces of the program are well underway, so I don't want to spend a lot of time going over these components, but I will touch on them briefly. The Land Use Committee gets regular updates, but it's been a while since the full board has had a comprehensive update on REAP, so I'll talk through these quickly. As I mentioned, REAP was enacted into the state budget and legislation in 2019, which was the same time we were finishing our second year of Civic Lab, which was focused on commercial corridor revitalization. So the board was very supportive of funding some projects out of that effort with some of these earlier funds. So we've dedicated up to $600,000 to support those Civic Lab year 2 projects on those commercial corridors. Additionally, around the time we were finishing our Regional Housing Needs Allocation, or RHNA, and local agencies were just beginning to start work on housing element updates. So it was a priority to use REAP funds to support local agencies with that housing element work. So we dedicated $1 million so that every agency is receiving some funding through this non-competitive allocation to help with their housing element work. Then last fall, we hosted a Civic Lab mini-series focused on housing. We did this in anticipation of sort of the next wave of REAP funds. We knew we were planning non-competitive and competitive grants, so we wanted to host these 4 online workshops to provide opportunities to and really spark ideas for innovation in housing policy amongst your staff as we were rolling out those next 2 rounds of grants. So we do have the bulk of our REAP funding going into non-competitive grants. Through these grants, again, every jurisdiction is receiving funding to help with a wide range of planning activities. Although I am going to turn to talk about the competitive program, I did want to quickly show the sum of the various non-competitive awards that we are giving, just to make sure every jurisdiction is getting funding through REAP and we're advancing housing planning in our region. So I'm sure you can't read this well, but it's a version of what you have in attachment B. So it shows the REAP funding dedicated to each agency through non-competitive funds. Attachment B takes this and kind of breaks it out into the components I just showed and adds on the competitive awards as well. So that's a brief reminder of the program overall. Now I'll focus just on this last major action from the REAP program, which is the competitive grant program. A moment ago, I mentioned it was the policy decision of the board to use REAP to leverage Green Means Go where possible. This competitive grant program is a significant opportunity that we've used to do just that. So the statewide goal for REAP, again, was really born out of and focused on the housing crisis, right? Aimed at accelerating housing through planning and process change. At the same time, our region's been focused on Green Means Go. How do we reduce vehicle miles traveled and greenhouse gas emissions in our region? And a primary component of that is accelerating development, including housing. So even though both programs were sort of created with different primary goals, they clearly have significant overlap in what they're trying to achieve and how. Both programs want to accelerate housing, both aim to reduce the cost and risk of housing. And while Green Means Go is largely hoping to fund actual projects, including those infrastructure and water and sewer type improvements, REAP is the planning work that can help many of these areas be then ready for Green Means Go funding. So there's definitely a real synergy between these two programs, and we believe we've really captured that with the competitive grant program. We kicked off the competitive grant program last fall with a board action on an overall framework that included the program goals you see here. Again, just largely spelling out that union between REAP and Green Means Go. Projects must be in a green zone, they must accelerate or increase housing, and they must support reduction in vehicle miles traveled. The actual application process for local agencies was from mid-January to mid-March. And although it's our first competitive funding round with REAP dollars, and it's our first focused in the green zones, it's not our first funding round at SACOG. So we were able to take many of the positive improvements from the transportation funding rounds and put those in here. We offered application assistance, pre-application meetings to anyone who wanted it, and a simple online application that didn't require council or board resolutions. We really just wanted to streamline the process and reflect what we've heard from our transportation funding rounds, but also this is one-time funding and we only had $1.7 million available for it. So we really did not want to burden your staff with a very cumbersome process. Additionally, similar to our transportation funding rounds, we had a review committee. The review committee met, they discussed and reviewed, they talked about projects. The review committee included 2 SACOG staff and 2 external agency staff. Their discussions centered around overall project understanding, project impacts, trying to understand how significant the project could be in terms of its potential to increase housing, the type of housing, the potential to reduce VMT. Ultimately, the review committee recommended 6 out of the 7 projects that applied for funding. But I do want to stress that was largely because of the funding was limited. All 7 projects were very well received by the committee. We think all have the potential to make a positive impact on housing and VMT reduction in our green zones. So it was difficult, but and I think all projects would have been recommended had we had more funding. But on the screen here is the list of project awards for the board's discussion and consideration. It's also in attachment A of your staff report. Some questions that came up at the Land Use and Natural Resource Committee were around the partial awards and the Sacramento County project not being recommended for funding. So I do want to talk about those. The two partial awards being recommended for Placer and Woodland are because the review committee and staff wanted to fund as many projects as possible. And these two projects are scalable. They will be able to adjust their project scope to the partial award that they're being recommended for. Sacramento County is the one that wasn't recommended for funding, but again, largely because this is a competitive program and the dollars are limited. The review committee did highlight several positives from the application, but ultimately decided in terms of the project submitted, it was the least clear in how significant of housing increase could happen from the project. But again, I really do want to emphasize it was a good project. The review committee was supportive, but the funding is limited. So they did have some tough decisions to make in their recommendation process. That concludes my presentation. Staff is requesting that the board deliberate, discuss, and based on the recommendation of the Land Use and Natural Resource Committee, consider approving the staff recommendation for the REAP competitive grant awards, and also authorize any necessary MOUs to get these projects started.
Thank you, Jennifer. Are there any questions from any of the directors? And any questions from the public? All right. Then with that, we can entertain a motion, please.
I'll move approval.
And that was Director Gallardo.
I'll second
Yes.
that motion.
And that second was
Baines.
Baines. Thank you, Director Baines. Roll call, please.
Thank you. Director Baines,
Aye.
Bernasconi,
Aye.
Bradford,
Aye.
Branscombe, absent Boulahan,
Aye.
Burris,
Aye.
Clark Kretz,
Aye.
Desmond,
Aye.
Frericks,
Aye.
Frost,
Aye.
Gallardo,
Aye.
Gog,
Yes.
Guerrero,
Aye.
Boomgarden for Harris,
Aye.
Joyner,
Aye.
Kennedy,
Aye.
Kozlowski,
Yes.
Lozano, absent Middleton,
Aye.
New,
Aye.
Sander,
Aye.
Saragosa,
Aye.
Saylor,
Aye.
Chenier,
Aye.
Spokley,
Yes.
Stallard, Director Stallard, could you register your vote, please?
Aye.
Thank you. Soon,
Aye.
Thomas,
Aye.
West,
Aye.
Vice Chair Jennings,
Aye.
Chair Gore.
Great. Thank you very much. And
Thank
before we
you.
go on to the next item, James, you wanted to say something.
I did. Thanks, Chair Gore. I hope my internet is going to behave here and that you can hear me. I just want to recognize Jennifer Hargrove because this is her last board meeting as she departs SACOG after 15 years of service. Jennifer, I think many of you have gotten to know her, has made a remarkable contribution to SACOG and the region this work. If you want to know anything about land use, development, housing, projects that have been built or proposed, might get built in the future, Jennifer is an encyclopedia and knows it all. She's calm, cool, and collected. She has not just managed this REAP program through your vote just now, but has really just made, again, an incredible contribution. And she's not going far, so we're very sad to lose her, but she has accepted a position with CalCog. So those of you on the CalCog board will see her a lot more. She's going to be an incredible asset for that organization, bring her incredible wealth of knowledge, and will clearly help us prioritize the Sacramento region finally to be #1, first and foremost, in the heart of CalCog and Bill Higgins. But I want to recognize her service, her just outstanding professionalism and what she's contributed. And thankfully, she's not going far, but we are certainly sad to see her go.
Thank you, James. And Jennifer, thank you for 15 years. That's a long time. We really appreciate your hard work and we wish you all the best.
Thank you.
All right, let's go to item 12, and this is the Establishing the Green Means Go pilot program. Christina Locke, it is your turn to present.
Thank you, Chair Gore. So this item is an action item to pass a resolution officially establishing the Green Means Go program and directing potential state funding towards accelerating infill development in locally designated green zones. This item did not go to committee because the state budget proposal did not come into focus in time. But given some timing issues that I'll mention during my presentation, we wanted to bring it to the board to consider at this meeting. There is a very strong likelihood that SACOG will receive at a minimum tens of millions of dollars in funding as part of the state budget this year to help us implement our sustainable communities strategy. And as a quick reminder for our newer board members in particular, Green Means Go, which Jen referenced in her presentation, has been a focus for SACOG advocacy since 2018, when the California Air Resources Board set the region's new target for greenhouse gas emission reductions from passenger vehicles, and we must demonstrate it, that reduction through our sustainable community strategy. So Green Means Go is our proposed pilot program to do that, to help implement our sustainable community strategy by accelerating infill development through infrastructure investments, things like water, sewer, drainage, and reducing and electrifying vehicle trips. The board adopted this framework back at the end of 2018. Since its development, we've advocated for state funding for the pilot program, really focusing on the need for major infrastructure improvements throughout our region to help facilitate infill development. Again, things like water, sewage, drainage, the types of projects that are really needed to help prime parcels so that developers are willing to come in the first place and consider developing in these infill areas. And that was a real need we heard from across the region from developers and jurisdictions alike, that there's this need, but there's a lack of funding out there to help it come to fruition. And in our conversations with the state legislature and leaders in the governor's administration, we've shared the need for funding for implementation of Green Means Go strategies in general, and use Green Means Go as an opportunity for a pilot to show how the region can partner with the state to help us reach our sustainable goal strategies, sustainable community strategy goals. In the budget conversations this year, it's very clear that all of our advocacy and really all of your advocacy has helped lay the foundation for a proposal to do just that, which is create a statewide block grant program to help regions with implementation of sustainable community strategies, or SCSs. As part of the governor's updated budget, what we call the May revise, the administration in May proposed $500 million in one-time federal American Rescue Plan Act funding for quote, and I'm quoting from the May revise, planning and implementation grants for MPOs for infill development targeted at meeting the state's climate goals and reducing vehicle miles traveled. So I think just hearing the description, it's very clear that this is really based on and Green Means Go, and that Green Means Go really helped lay the foundation for this proposal. Both the state Senate and the Assembly responded by actually increasing it to $750 million for the program. However, as James referenced earlier, we still don't yet have a final budget, and so we don't have a final number. We also don't yet know exactly how much money SACOG will receive in the final budget. The legislature has come to an agreement on a final budget proposal for themselves, an agreement between the two houses, which they did pass on Monday, and so they met the state's constitutional deadline to pass a balanced budget. However, they've yet to come to an agreement with the governor, and negotiations continue. Because the constitutional deadline has been met, it's difficult to say exactly when a final deal will be reached and when we will see the final proposal for this funding. With June being the end of the fiscal year and the legislature set to go on a month-long summer recess in mid-July, I think there's a pretty strong hope that a deal will be reached in the next 2 to 4 weeks. But again, their clock or their deadline has been met, and so there isn't an exact timeline for when we should be able to see this happen. But I think what we can know is that there's a very strong likelihood that we'll see somewhere between $500 million and $750 million for this SES implementation block grant program. And we continue to advocate for our full ask for Green Means Go, $100 million to be directed to SACOG, recognizing the work that we've done in the lead up to this. Now, kind of to the timing for this and why we're bringing it to you today, both the governor's and the legislature's proposals use federal funds for the program, which means that they have to be obligated and spent relatively quickly for these types of projects. They'll have to be obligated by the end of 2024 and expended by December 2026. And so because of this quick time frame, staff is recommending that the board adopt a resolution providing direction that the funding be used to implement Green Means Go, consistent with the framework that the board previously adopted and really based on all of our advocacy efforts that we've been doing the last 3 years, that we want to direct state funding towards accelerating infill development in our region. And this will allow staff to begin developing the funding program between now and the board's next meeting in August, since the board will be on recess in July. And as I mentioned, as budget conversations continue, we do continue to press for direct allocation for Green Means Go, again, recognizing all of the board's efforts as a key catalyst for this state funding. And so I want to close by thanking all of you for your advocacy support, the calls you've made, the committee hearings you called into over multiple years. It clearly helped with the creation of this program, and it also helps us in this final push for direct funding. And now I think James would like to also make a few comments.
Well, that was an excellent summary from Christina. I just want to emphasize what she said, that we were hoping today, in addition to resolution, there'd be a bit of a celebration, and that would be premature. But I do want to recognize, you know, a lot of success, I think, is all you know, certainly in my experience, is a lot of persistence and then some good timing. And I hope that that's the combination we have here. But that persistence, that hard work, the homework that we have done so we can answer those questions to the legislators we talk to the administration. When they say, why do you need this? What would you spend it on? And what difference would it make? We have answers. And we have answers because all of you have put time and spent that time to weigh in. Your jurisdictions have adopted these green zones, 23 at last count, another 4 who are interested. And I think we have undoubtedly moved things significantly so that we now have a potential statewide program, as Christina said. So happy to answer questions about the resolution. I think it would be premature for a celebration, but I just want to say there haven't been a lot of things that have united our delegation across party lines, and this is one of them. And regardless of what happens in the next few weeks, I'm very proud of the efforts that we've made, the incredible hard work from Christina, and our KP advocacy team, and all of you who have weighed in, not over the last few months, but over the last few years. So we're both happy to take any questions.
Thank you, James, and thank you very much, Christina. Appreciate that report. And do we have any questions on this item? Or any public comment on this item?
I have a quick question, Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
Thanks for doing this, and James, thank you and the staff for being on top of this and putting us in the right position here. I'm just wondering if we should, given all of our discussions and what we're doing in the next item, should there be an equity component as we think about this resolution and how we want to go about doing this? We've talked about you know, some kind of tool as a lens of how we look at things in the work we're doing, and I would think that we would want to add that into the resolution.
Thank you, Director Schneer. Good question. What's interesting, right, is we've already established the Green Means Go locales, right? We already know where those are. And so I don't have an answer to that. I do think we want to make sure that we use these dollars in a way that, right, addresses infill, and a lot of those areas probably are those areas that are disadvantaged. And I don't have them in front of me. But we certainly could do that. I don't know the interest in that, or staff, your thoughts about that. It may be sort of part of it, but.
I have a thought, at least if I could just offer up a thought, and as we get through discussion here, you all can weigh in, which is to give us some direction this morning to look at, we're going to have to establish some sort of grant guideline. There's a lot of work still to do on this, and to give us direction that in the grant program and the guidelines, the award of funding, we look at equity and take a hard look at that. So that would be my thought, but happy obviously to entertain whatever direction the board wants to go.
I would think maybe we could do two things. And James, I think that's a really good idea, and I would be very much in favor of that. I think we could also, within the resolution, just recognize exactly what the chair just said, which I think is true, that many of these areas of infill do require a little bit more. And so recognizing that fact as part of the resolution, I don't think changes how we operate on that. But I think the second component, then, what you just suggested, James, to me would take care of my concerns, certainly.
Thank you. Any other questions from directors or input from directors?
Yeah, we've got directors Thomas, Soon, and Stallard with hands raised, I believe.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Let's start with Director Stallard, please.
I appreciate Jay's sentiment, and I think we all want to do everything we can to lift all of the people in our region. But I think this is a demonstration project, and we already have identified territories, and I wouldn't want to discourage anybody from advancing their project on the merits, regardless, at this point, in order to have a project that the most impressive project we can have. So in other words, to keep the competition as broad as possible, I think we should not put too many constraints on it. That doesn't mean we don't think about equity. We always think about equity. At least I think that's the nature of our region. So I like the idea that this is something to keep in mind, but I don't want to constrain our ability to identify a project which will really speak well for the potential for Greens Means Go. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Stallard. Director Soon, and then Director Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. I also appreciate Director Schneer's comments. I guess I would ask that, this is as I'm going through it in my mind, it's going to be a very complex implementation, but we went down this path and we were trying to make sure that we could comply with, SB 375. And I just want to ensure that not everybody has the same amount of green zones. And I guess, I'll have to speak from my jurisdiction. I still remember back, it was a few years ago now, where we showed a map of the greatest greenhouse gas emissions. And it was down in the South County, and specifically Elk Grove. However, we don't have a whole lot of green zones. So it's going to be interesting to me that if this funding comes about, if communities that are, biggest contributors to greenhouse gas in our region, but then they don't have a lot of the green zones, and how are we going to reconcile that and achieve the goals of the program while still trying to address the equity issue? So I guess I would ask that as we implement, we be mindful of that, and perhaps it's a review of the green zones and considering other things, that we, whether it was the last funding round or our bike pedestrian trails master plan, just more of a comprehensive overview as we go to implement. Because I think to Director Stoller's point, This is going to be a demonstration, and if the legislature is looking at us, I think we want to make sure we demonstrate progress in what we are trying to achieve to make sure that, you know, our NTP and SCS, all the federal guidelines. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Thomas and then Director Desmond.
Thank you. I think I'm echoing Director Soon and Director Solid's comments, and I'd just like to add that our region is so vast, and between our rural communities and our urban communities, equity plays out a little differently in each of our jurisdictions. So I think it's important, while each of us are mindful in our own communities, that it's important that this program be broad and implementable, and leave it up to the local jurisdictions to figure out what works best to address the issues that we face, which are unique across our region. So I think let's be mindful of it, but I don't want to complicate the program at this point. That's just my 2 cents worth.
Thank you, Director Desmond.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I appreciate Director Schneer bringing this up, and I actually agree with him. I think the Green Means Go program, along with a lot of the other programs, are really part and parcel of our priority for equity and inclusion. And I, for one, have a lot of parts of my district in urban, unincorporated Sacramento County that have really suffered from land use planning decisions that have made it extremely inequitable in these communities. And I think, we put that provision in a lot of programs that SACOG oversees with respect to competitive grant processes. It's not a dispositive factor, but it's one factor. And I mean, I'd support including something like that in the resolution. And I think, maybe I'll ask James's question. Would this potentially strengthen our hand at the state legislature that we are including this in our resolution?
Well, thanks, Director Desmond. It has been strengthening our hand at the state legislature for some time that the green zones you all have nominated. Again, I want to remind you all, the 23 green zone, 23 jurisdictions with green zones, multiples within each, voluntary program, bottom up. Majority of those green zones are lower income, people of color, drive less, lower VMT, and that has really helped. We could certainly, again, up to your direction, you could put it in the resolution. You could give us the direction today that we can go back and work on even things incorporating the Commercial Corridor Task Force Toolkit that Director Sander chaired last year. We have a lot of language around equity and inclusion in that we could use as we develop the grant guidelines. So we can add something in today at the board's pleasure on equity, especially for Green Means Go and in green zones. You could just give us the general direction to make sure that we do our due diligence to incorporate it. And most importantly, I just want to say to you, and I know this is a good conversation, because in many ways you're beginning to have this sort of almost the warm up to what does it mean to put racial equity into a funding program. As staff, we don't have all the answers, but we want to at least begin to ask these questions and have these kinds of discussions. So I just want to say, from our perspective, we really appreciate this being raised. We've thought about it. I don't think we have all the answers, but we definitely want to, and we have been thinking about how to do this from an affordable housing perspective, right? From a not displace the existing residents and small businesses in a lot of these green zones, but to also accept the development where we need to get it to meet our greenhouse gas targets.
I appreciate that, James. Yeah, I think including it only has an upside, and I don't think it would be really detrimental to anybody. And if Director Schneer makes a motion to include it, I'm happy to support it.
Thank you, Director Saylor, and then Director Sander.
I appreciate Director Schneer bringing this topic up, and also the comments from all of you. I think Supervisor Desmond's points are very much aligned with my thoughts on this. It seems to me that an easy place to put the language would be among the whereas clauses, and a simple description of the green zone locations that we've already designated would address the issue of inclusion and race equity and inclusion, because those green zones in most cases, I believe, will actually address this issue. So that, Jay, would be one of the ways we could do it, is simply add a whereas clause that has a little bit of description of the characteristics of the green zone. Green zone's already designated, wouldn't be more than a sentence.
Director Sander?
Yeah, just a quick comment. You know, we put in a lot of work on commercial corridors around the region last year, a lot of discussion time, really productive thinking. And what we realized, of course, is that 100% of our jurisdictions have these old commercial corridors. And I don't have perfect data in front of me, but I do have a strong feeling that those old commercial corridors also overlap significantly with these green zones. Staff might be able to offer some more clarity there. But I think, you know, language focusing on that identified need within SACOG, something we worked on last year, and something certainly that the legislature is interested in. That's the major focus for this entire program, not just commercial corridors, but, you know, reduction of greenhouse gases. But that's the most likely place where that occurs, at least the best scoring sort of place where that development occurs. Makes sense that we include something that focuses attention on those areas.
Thank you. Director Chenier.
Yeah, I would just say, first of all, thank you, Supervisor Desmond. I appreciate that, and Director Sander as well. You know, we have a fundamental choice to make, and I think we either do this and use this lens for all of the work that we do. It's very hard to pick and choose. I totally understand. We all represent very different districts with different demographics or different localities. But again, I think if we make this commitment, we need to add it in, and just keeping it in mind for later there's no accountability around that. And we have to hold ourselves accountable for either doing it or not. So I'm happy to make a motion on this item. I appreciate the staff work with direction to add a whereas, as I think Director Saylor pointed out. It's a relatively straightforward piece to do, that we recognize equity as part of the work that we're doing here, and that also we get a report back from James and staff when we get to the actual RFPs, or however that works, of how we're including equity in that as well. So I would make that as a motion.
I'll second.
All right, thank you. We have a motion and a second to add a whereas clause to include doing this work via an equity lens, and it could probably be included. I mean, it certainly can be included in the resolution.
I have a quick clarification, if I might.
Yes.
Are we talking, can we also include economic equity, not racial and economic equity? I think that has a broader appeal for a lot of our jurisdictions.
I'm happy to do that.
All right, thank you.
All right, so.
And I would ask the seconder of my motion if, Rich, if that works for you as well.
Thanks, Jay.
I think I heard an agreement there.
Oh, sorry.
So do we have, we need to have actually some wording for that resolution. And
thank you, Chair Gore.
You are, Mr. Gross.
So let me just put a proposal on the table that we would add the following language at the end of the be it further resolved paragraph that says, and that the staff will consider racial equity and inclusion as well as economic equity in developing the funding guidelines for the program.
I think that's fine. And I want to reiterate Rich's point as well. I do a lot of work on professional development with the legislature, and everything we do now, we're asked by our bosses, which is Senate rules and Assembly rules, what we're doing around racial equity questions as we do our professional development. So I don't see how this does anything but help us as we move forward in trying to work with the legislature, both on this specific item, but I think generally as well, going back to James's goal of really making us a lot more influential in the Capitol. So Kirk, as always, thank you for the language. That's fine with me.
Thank you. And Director Saragosa, you had a comment?
Yeah, I was just going to echo
Director Chenier. I mean, the legislature definitely will take a positive outlook on this based on the language that we're, I think, inputting, and anything in this area is going to be looked upon favorably. So there's no downside with the legislature with adding this in. Just wanted to reiterate that. And I, just as a comment aside in terms of on Christina's presentation, it looks like trailer bill language will go through, probably as late as September this year as the legislature and the governor work through what the budget actually is going to be the final thing. So we may not know for a while. I mean, I'd love to see something happen in the next 2 to 4 weeks, but the reality is a lot of these things are going to go through the entire summer. So we may have to wait a little bit longer before we know exactly what that allocation is going to look like.
Thank you very much. So quick point of order. Do we need to have a separate motion on the addition to the resolution? Or can we make a vote on it?
Chair Gore, as I interpret the motion, it is that we adopt the resolution language with the additional language that I just suggested, and that's part of Director Chenier's motion, and I believe the second has concurred in that.
And with direction as we get to the RFP stage, just to come back as an item for the board to consider.
And that's part of the motion. It's not required. Did you want to add that to the resolution? That's just part of the motion to approve the resolution and give direction, Director Chenier?
Correct. Thank you.
Got it.
Thank you for helping me articulate what I'm thinking. Appreciate it.
All right. Is there any further discussion on this item or public comment on this item?
There's no public comment.
All right. So then we have a motion and a second on the resolution with change. And with that, we will go ahead and take roll call, please.
Thank you. Director Baines?
Aye.
Bernasconi?
Aye.
Bradford?
Aye.
Branscombe absent. Boulahan?
Aye.
Burris?
Aye.
Clark Kretz?
Aye.
Desmond?
Aye.
Frerichs?
Aye.
Frost?
Aye.
Gallardo?
Aye.
Gog?
Yes.
Guerrero?
Aye.
Boomgarden for Harris?
Aye.
Joyner?
Aye.
Kennedy?
Aye.
Kozlowski?
Yes.
Lozano?
Yes.
Middleton?
Aye.
New?
Aye.
Sander?
Aye.
Saragosa?
Aye.
Saylor?
Aye.
Chenier?
Aye, and thank you.
Stokely?
Yes.
Stallard?
Aye.
Soon?
Aye.
Thomas?
Aye.
West? Director West, could you register your vote? I'll mark him absent. Vice Chair Jennings?
Aye.
Chair Gore?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate that. We will move on to item 13, which is an information item, and this is a report out from Vice Chair Jennings on the Race, Equity, and Inclusion Working Group meeting that took place, I think it was last month. So, Director Jennings, if you want to go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chair Gore. And you're right, it did take place last month on May the 28th from 1 to 3 p.m. It was an incredible meeting. And I want to thank the entire board for their vote of confidence in Rick Jennings for allowing me to lead this working group. And I also want to take time to thank the SACOG staff for all their great work in helping us to prepare for that meeting. I just want to give you a quick update and briefing on what took place during the meeting, because our last conversation kind of led us to this point on the formation of the SACOG Race, Equity, Inclusion Working Group. And I want to stop for a second. I want to go backwards. I want to acknowledge Council Member and Director Chenier for starting something years ago with the Youth Leadership Academy that we saw the fruit of our labor today when Skylar got up in front of all of us and spoke. And he did so articulately and did so well. And I look at all the Youth Leadership Academy as the ones that will one day sit in the seats that we're sitting in right now. But what we're preparing them through this Youth Leadership Academy to one day do that. And Skylar said something that just resonated with me, and I wrote it down. He says, it takes action, not only words, to shape the future. It takes action, not only words, to shape the future. And I think the same thing was said by this working group. And I just want to kind of tell you what we did in the 2 hours in our first meeting. So let me give you a little background information first. We had our agenda. We did 5 things in the agenda. I did a welcome. Kurt Traus did the review of the Brown Act in order to keep us legal. James Corliss, our executive director, did an incredible job of discussing where we have been as an organization. He provided an overview of the national landscape and the renewed effort for civil rights and how SACOG responded to the killing of George Floyd. He also talked about how the board convened the working group to think through the approaches of how we can advance racial equity in SACOG's work. And so he did a great job of that. I came back with the next subject matter of why we are here and where we're going. And then what does success look like for this working group, which I'll show you at the end of my presentation. There were 10 members that SACOG, 10 board members from SACOG that are represented in this working group. And I think we have a picture of those 10 that we'll put on the screen. Monica, if you can help me with that. And then there are also 10 public members. And so, if you'll just acknowledge our working group and give them a round of applause, because what I was so impressed with was that everybody that was asked said yes to being a part of the working group. And that makes our working group so much richer, because this group will build on the work that was established in the second half of 2020. This group also has an expertise in racial justice work through policy and planning in the fields of transportation, housing, public health, economic opportunity, and workforce development. And this group is a very, very powerful group. And I think you'll see that as we continue to go through what we talked about and how we formed this first group, getting ready for our second meeting, which will take place in August, and our third meeting, which will take place in November. So you can take this slide down now that you've seen the people. And I'm sure you know many of them in your work as well. As I said, the 20 members have an expertise in a lot of different areas that are going to help us as we form this racial equity inclusion working group. We had 3 areas that we wanted to focus on. One was establishing a baseline of understanding of SACOG's work. We also wanted to build personal connections with each other, and we spent a lot of time doing that. And also committing to the 2021 working group outcomes. What are those outcomes? Developing a racial equity statement of change and commitment, prioritizing racial equity in the upcoming MTP and SCS long-range plan, and building the support and direction for developing a racial equity action plan for 2022. What does success look like? So we asked each person to talk to us about, first, why did they join the group, and what does success look like? And a couple of things that people said that I don't want to misquote, so I want to read it directly to you. Remember, we had 20 members, so each person spoke. I'm not going to read all 20 comments, but I'm going to read a few. What was the motivation for joining the group? the desire to create a racially just and equitable place for future generations, the opportunity to support SACOG and learn through the process. We have a unique moment in time to create policy, environmental and systematic change. And the last 12 to 18 months have illuminated the need for an equitable approach from various sectors, from a variety of sectors. This is an opportunity for us to create unity and inclusion. SACOG's work can help improve home ownership and generational wealth for communities of color and for generations to come. Those are just a few of the reasons as to why they joined the group. At the end of the day, we wanted to know what would success look like. And we wanted to build a foundation and a piece of art that each one of them would have to determine what does success look like. And Monica, if you have our board, our wall, on the wall, you can see they were asked to give one word or a phrase of what success will look like. And what you don't have is the definition of each one of the words that they gave. So in the case of normalize, to be able to say the uncomfortable, to be able to name it, say it, and make race equitable, equity the norm. To make race equity the norm. Unity and progress. Let's do more than report on the shelf and committees or on a committee that doesn't do anything. Let's do more than report. Put it on the shelf or a committee that doesn't do anything. We want to see unity and we want to see progress. Patience and impatience. Listen to each other and our views and not expect everyone to share my views. And I remain impatient about progress and getting the job done. I don't think I read that properly, but I think you get the gist of it. And then sustain change, successful change that is sustainable. I could go through each one of these and I think it would really help you to understand the emotion that I felt when people were putting this up. But the one that probably touched me the most was fulfilled and happy. I know that we can create the change that we want to see for this generation and for all future generations. This has been a good day, and I am happy to be a part of it. So our next meetings are August the 27th and November the 29th. If you'd like to watch the whole meeting in progress, there was a meeting recording that is available on YouTube. So you can actually, if you have time and you want to really see what took place at this meeting, you have the opportunity to be able to do so on YouTube. But this was one of the most powerful pieces of work that I've ever been involved in. And it did get very emotional for me because we were all on the same team working towards the same thing: race, equity, and inclusion. And today I saw something that was real interesting. There's a 21-day racial equity habit building challenge that's going to take place in August. And so for others who really want to maybe make some changes themselves, some individual changes, this is an opportunity for you to get involved in a challenge that I think I'm going to do, because I know this is going to help me to lead this group and also understand how we can use this work to make SACOG a leader in the field of race, inclusion, and equity. So with that, I think I've given you everything that took place at the meeting. I thought it was a very successful meeting. I think we have a great working group. I applaud us for having 10 SACOG members and 10 public members working together in this field. And I think it will help SACOG, especially in conversations that we had right before this meeting that Member Chenier brought up about our work in equity. So With that, I'll just open it up for any questions you may have.
Thank you, Vice Chair Jennings. Any questions from directors? I did have an opportunity to listen to the meeting, and I encourage you all, if you're interested and you aren't serving on the committee, to listen to the last committee meeting and the upcoming ones. I think it's just very helpful. It was moving, and I really appreciate the work that's going into this effort. And I'm trying to see if I see any hands up. Director Soon and then Director Guerrero.
Thank you, Chair Gore. I just wanted to recognize and thank Vice Chair Jennings or Chair Jennings for his leadership in this space. I think he's the right person for the job, and I think he adds or inspires all of us in this work. So I look forward to the future meetings. Thank you.
Director Guerrero.
Thank you, Chair Gore. Just wanted to also thank our chair and our vice chair. I think they did an excellent job in providing us the leadership. I immediately felt the cohesiveness among all the members, between electeds and community-based organizations. And, sometimes, social worker, that's usually the hardest part. They're trying to get everybody on the same page. But it's the way this meeting was established that, Rick, you did a great job listening to everybody and, being really compassionate and taking to heart their thoughts and even sharing that with us here today. That's a huge step for all of us to be able to embrace what the outcomes we're all going to be working towards to achieve that change. And I want to say that Director Shanier's recommendation today, was just a reflection that change is happening now. And I greatly appreciate it. And also, feel emotionally touched by, how this is happening even today. So thank you.
Thank you, Director Saragosa, and then Frericks, and then we'll stop with that since we do have a presentation workshop after that. Michael?
Thank you, Chair. I'll echo my colleagues and thank Rick. I mean, it was a great meeting, and first I wasn't sure about everyone. A very long intro from everybody, but it really helped because it gave a good background of everyone, not just us as directors, but our community partners in this effort as well. So I thought that was a great way to kind of lay that foundation. And with Rick in the lead, it's like, put me in, coach. I want to go ahead and go and do good work. So appreciate the efforts there and respecting diversity of thought and working towards a common solution. So again, thanks.
Thanks, Mike.
Director Frericks.
Yeah, thanks very much, Madam Chair. Just really also echoing this similar sets of comments that folks have made already, but I really just wanted to say a couple quick things. One, to see the evolution of this process from which was, I think, a good foundation in 2020, but to see sort of this, the inclusion of folks from the community throughout this, we have a very diverse region. It was mentioned by a number of directors earlier in the last discussion item. But I think even though we do have quite a diverse region and come from different sets of experiences and backgrounds, and our individual communities are, a lot of similarities, but also a lot of differences, I think we often do talk, or we sort of operate in silos in an echo chamber at this board level. I mean, we, of just the folks who are here and sort of in at the board level. And I think having this range of perspectives from individuals from outside of SACOG who are, out in our community all throughout the 6-county region, I think is exceptionally important. And I'm just honored to be able to still continue to be able to be part of it and be able to have Director Jennings be the chair, and really appreciate the leadership that he and the rest of the folks who are serving on this body again are exhibiting. Thanks so much.
Chair Gore, two things just in closing, because I know we want to go. I want to thank Chair Farage, Director Farage, for his leadership last year and the work that he did in getting us to this point. It was the beginning. He was there at the very beginning. And this is tough work. And he made my path a lot easier. And I just want to thank him for his work in doing what he did to get us started. And also, none of us does anything alone. I want to make sure that I acknowledge Monica and the staff, the SACOG staff, for helping us to make this and get this where it is today. I had an idea about building a foundation, and they came up with the brick wall. And I'm hopeful that we as a board can add our thoughts to that brick wall. And I'd love the opportunity one day to be able to put the brick wall up and us have a conversation about what we can add to what's already there. And so I want to thank the staff for everything and helping make that meeting possible and all the other meetings that we're going to have in the future. I just want to thank them and let them know how much I appreciate it.
Thank you, Vice Chair Jennings, and thank you everyone for your input. We're going to move to our workshop, and as we move to this workshop, it's the Next Generation Transit Strategy for the SACOG region. Chris Doherty is going to kick off the workshop and introduce the presenters, and as he's doing that, if you need to stretch or move around a little bit because we've been sitting, this is going to be a very good conversation. I'm really looking forward to the workshop and the presentation, but feel free to do a little bit of this because sometimes it's hard to sit for long periods of time. And with that, Chris, why don't you kick it off?
Thank you, Chair Gore, and members of the board. Chris Doherty from the Transportation Group here at SACOG. Earlier this month, you had an opportunity through the committees to review and provide some feedback on the draft strategies from the Next Generation Transit Study. We anticipate bringing that draft plan back to the board in August for further review. We have included the executive summary in the staff report to give you an idea of what the final product will look like. Today, we have a really outstanding opportunity to hear how the Los Angeles region has implementing very similar strategies that we are recommending. We are joined today by Avital Shavit from LA Metro, who's a senior manager in the Office of Extraordinary Innovation at LA Metro. And she focuses on sustainable transportation, both in policy and in modes. She'll be discussing today how LA Metro is implementing the similar strategies that we are recommending through Next Generation Study throughout the county. After her presentation, we will have a Q&A session with Avital, with Autumn Bernstein from ARIP, our consultant on the Next Generation Transit Study, Mike Rawson, my co-PM on the project, and myself. So with that, I'd love to hand it over to Avital, who will have a presentation for us.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me today. Really great to be part of your meeting. My name is Avital Shavit. I'm a senior manager at LA County Metro in the Office of Extraordinary Innovation. I've worked in the planning department on transportation finance. And today I really want to talk to you about our Metro Vision 2028 plan that we adopted and approved in 2018, and the work that we've done in the last 3 years to implement that vision. And, just when you think about LA County, we have 88 cities, 10 million people, lots of traffic congestion. You can say, how could LA County be similar to the SACOG region? And I think that, there are a lot of similarities because we have very diverse land use demographics and communities through these 88 cities. In Clockwork, you can see City of Compton. We have transit that serves those communities. But definitely different types of demographics, equity issues, and historic kind of context there. We have Santa Clarita downtown, which is kind of a quieter suburban bedroom community, but has this very charming, downtown that's been really thought out and planned. We have Long Beach, which has these great, beach communities. It has varying density. And then the picture of the horses is City of Burbank, which is actually the heart of LA County, but has a lot of horse property. Has a really great tradition of this big city, a small town, and a big city. So we have to kind of work with our 88 cities, and there is a large diversity around them. And I always think if something works for LA County, it can kind of work anywhere in the world. because we have such diversity that we have to deal with and address. And it's a great challenge and an opportunity. So what is Vision 2028? Really, it was an idea to provide a world-class transportation system that can enhance the quality of life for people who live, work, play in LA County, but really removing access to high-quality transportation options. And the plan kind of put really stretch goals and really ambitious goals around strategies and actions to get us there. And really the challenge in LA County is probably a similar challenge that you see in the Sacramento region. Right now, a lot of our road capacity, and we have a lot of road capacity, but a lot of it is taken up by people driving in their own car, single occupancy drivers, right? And we know that if we can use the same road space in a more efficient way by having more people carpool and vanpool, maybe walk a little bit, bike a little bit, and take transit, that we can use that space in our city and our county much more efficiently. So thinking about that efficiency, we set some really ambitious goals and visions for the next 10 years. We want to double the non-drive alone trip in the next 10 years. So anything besides driving alone, vanpool, carpool, walking, biking, and transit. We want to say that everybody should have access to 10-minute walk or roll to high quality mobility options. We want to see faster buses. We want to see getting our buses out of traffic. We want to see higher frequency of our transit system, that you won't have to wait longer than 15 minutes any time of day for high quality transit. And we want to improve options for people to get out of congestion that are currently driving. So I'm going to talk a little bit about two of our goals. We had 5 big goals in this plan. 2 of them really pertain to a lot of the work that we're looking at, kind of re-envisioning and reimagining our transit networks in LA County. The first goal is to provide high quality mobility options that enable people to spend less time in traffic, less time traveling. And so what have we done in the last 3 years to meet that goal? Well, part of we've looked at how we can better align our existing long-range transportation plans, our existing Measure R and Measure M sales tax initiatives and the projects we already have in the queue, how we can better align them with our existing goals. We've also established a new Office of Race and Equity to make sure that all of our projects are meeting some new equity goals. That we have an equity platform that we implemented around the same time as this Vision 2028 plan. We are looking at the idea of using pricing, charging people to drive, called the Traffic Reduction Study, and basically expanding upon our existing express lane program. We also initiated a next-gen bus plan, which basically looks at how we can better serve people with our broad network of metro buses, but also the buses of over 20 municipal bus operators in the LA County region. And how we're actually in the process of currently implementing a broad range of service changes that are optimizing our existing transit resources towards where people need it the most, to get towards our goal of getting better, high quality transit to everyone in the county. It also elevated the idea of using innovation and on-demand models, which I'll talk a little bit more towards the end of this presentation. We launched a new Metro Micro service, which is on-demand transit system that uses small vans to get around. And we started looking at maybe as part of our initiatives on equity, maybe we should enable some of our systems to be free to those that need it the most. We know that about 75% of our riders are low income, particularly that 70 to 80% of the riders that use our bus service are low income. So one of the things that our past CEO brought on is say, maybe we should make bus and transit service free to those who need it the most. And some of the challenges and opportunities that may not a surprise to your region is we need to figure out how do we use all of these pieces together to go after solutions. How do we deepen our partnerships with municipal partners like the city of Burbank, Santa Clarita, City of Los Angeles? And how do we unify all our policy around pricing? Because pricing, and I'll talk a little bit more, is kind of a tool to optimize our efficiency and serve our customers better. The second goal that we have made a lot of progress to is looking at how we deliver outstanding trip experience for all users in the transportation system. And so what that means is enabling our existing users of our bus and rail system to easily plan a trip, to quickly purchase their fare, to have convenient access and feel safe and comfortable accessing those transit stops throughout the county, to provide clear and accurate information, to improve the headways that serve our existing transit networks, and better coordinate the transfer experience between bus to bus or bus to rail, and to getting people on time where they need to go. I think, one of our challenges is our county is so broad and so big, travel times are long, and getting people to opportunity, to jobs across the region is really a challenge. So what have we done to get towards this goal? Well, we recently established an Office of Customer Experience. We adopted a brand new plan for customer experience and how we might work with reimagining the experience on buses for a long time. And we have a really robust plan to expand rail transportation in LA County, but we really see our buses as the backbone of our transit system. And looking at how we can get them out of traffic. So I want to talk a little bit about our traffic reduction study, which is using pricing to not only get any driver out of traffic, but also to get our transit moving quicker through the region. We're looking at a study in the next 2 years to look at where a traffic reduction pilot could be feasible in LA County, where it could work, and where there might be willing partners. We have to work with our local cities because they own and have jurisdiction over the street right of way. And we need to, as much as this is not a technical challenge, it's really a community challenge, right? If we are going to be charging people for what our existing road space, it needs to be something we work with community to think about in a complex way. And so some of the goals of the program are, to improve congestion, but also to get high quality transportation options for all. And so we're really focused on how do we improve public health and safety, support our goals on economic and environmental justice, improve the economy, so speed people up through the region so they can get to jobs and opportunity, but to also reinvest potentially some of the revenues that are generated from the congestion pricing to serve our equity-focused communities that have essential needs for transportation services. And we know that pricing works to manage congestion and demand for road space. We've seen it work, internationally in London and Stockholm, but in the US, in Seattle on the SR 520, there was some road pricing that's applied on all of their bridges, and they reduced congestion of 25% in peak hours. And we're also able to speed up their transit through the region. So on the other side of the coin of charging people potentially to drive to speed up traffic, we're also looking at this idea of what if we paid people not to drive? And this idea came out of a process that we call our unsolicited proposal program within our Office of Extraordinary Innovation, in which we asked the private sector, hey, what are your ideas of solving traffic? And we came up with this idea of working with academics. We're working with Duke Center for Advanced Hindsight and also Harvard University to do a research pilot in which we actually last year received a $700,000 grant from the FTA to look at how we can potentially incentivize or pay people to not drive alone in their car and to do something other than driving alone. It could be carpooling, van pooling, taking transit, riding a bike, walking, or teleworking. And we saw, the one silver lining of the pandemic is we really had this experiment to test out teleworking broadly in LA County. The first part of this, what we're calling a travel rewards research pilot, to test what is the right price point that we might essentially incentivize somebody not to drive alone for every trip. We're actually testing some research around telework we're actually starting with Metro employees because we have 10,000 employees at LA County, and we have about 1,500 employees that have been teleworking through the pandemic. So we're starting out with them, doing some research about how do we optimize the telework experience? What are best practices for maximizing efficiency for workers and for the work conditions to make telework successful so that it can be a tool to potentially solve traffic, especially during peak hours. The second part of this research is going to be working with large employers, nonprofits, and other community partners to test out different incentive models. One of the things we think is very low-hanging fruit, but hard to implement, is a carpooling program. And we're looking at using technology like Waze Carpool, which is one of our partners on this project, to see how we can test out new models in incentivizing carpooling. We're also working with Uber, Ride Amigos, which is a TDM platform, and several others to test out how we can use innovative technology. So part of Vision 2028, we saw the future is really multimodal. It's not just about transit. It's about digital technology potentially helping unlock new modes of transportation and trip planning. It's about walking and biking, and it's also including transit. So one of the things that we experimented in the last 2 years is we had our own mobility on demand pilot where we worked with VIA to do first last mile trips on demand, which you could book with a phone or a smartphone. You could call for a ride to get to and from a metro station. During the pandemic, we actually used some of these resources to deliver food from food banks to those in need throughout the region because we had additional resources. And we used the lessons learned from this mobility on demand. And I know that in the Sacramento region, you also have been working with VIA to do on-demand transit. We learned some lessons, and we actually now have launched our own on-demand micro transit program called Metro Micro. And the drivers of the program are actually Metro labor employees that we have trained in-house. We're working with an outside technology firm called RideCo. And we have this service that's currently running in 6+ zones throughout LA County. You can book a ride on an app on your smartphone, but you can also call into a call center to book a ride to create an account. And it's provided a really great opportunity to serve a lot of the areas through our next gen plan that we identified that bus service doesn't necessarily serve in the most efficient way or serve our customers in the best way because there might be low density residential areas or there just might be, for example, in the LAX around our airport, we have worker shifts that are really varying around the clock, and serving those workers getting to and from work is challenging with traditional transit, but maybe an on-demand service can really be helpful to workers who are working split shifts or 24-hour shifts. And so, we've really found that on-demand service has a great return on investment in terms of the cost as an innovative delivery model. We found that it's able to kind of bridge the digital divide and accessibility in terms of providing not only accessing these services through a smartphone, but also providing a call center. We're able to make sure these on-demand services are ADA accessible because we have control over what types of vehicles are out in the fleet. We purchase them or lease them ourselves. And I think the only real challenge, I think, for transportation agencies and authorities in thinking about these new on-demand services is getting the marketing reach right. Services like Uber and Lyft that are out in the field, they have had many years to kind of build up a following and market share. And I think trying to essentially compete in the market it is going to take some time, but I think is a really great opportunity. And so just knowing that you have the right kind of marketing outreach, and it's going to take kind of an aggressive kind of working with community, teaching people about these new services, and maybe even doing a little bit more hand-holding around digital divide to make those services known by community. So just a little bit about kind of the future of where Metro as a transportation authority is going. One of the things that we think is key to customer access and a streamlined trip is unifying our fare payment modes. And so you see on the left, in 2016, we launched a bike share program, and we made it a priority. That bike share program is integrated into our transit fare payment system. So the TAP card is the way that we pay for buses and trains in all of LA County. Over 20 to 30 municipal transit operators are also on this TAP card system and have been for many years. And so we started the system, and now you can sign up for a Metro Bike Share account, and you can pay for it in the same way that you pay for and get access to buses and trains. We recently, also with our Metro Micro on-demand service, you see that in the vans themselves, we have a tapping stanchion. So you can actually use your transit fare card to pay for this on-demand transit service in the van, and it's seamless and very accessible. This past year, we launched a new transit app in partnership with Apple that you no longer have to go and purchase a transit tap card to ride our buses and trains or our micro metro or our Metro Bike Share. You can download a transit card onto your phone, and you can store it in your Apple Wallet or in your Google Wallet on Android phone. Another really exciting initiative in terms of technology is about a year ago, we launched a partnership with the transit app. This was actually an in-kind, no-cost partnership to Metro. We replaced our what was aging transit app that we had for the county for LA Metro, and replaced it with the transit app as our official app of record. And this app has really been great because it provides a lot of real-time data for what riders are actually doing out in the field. And we're able to have, number one, transit app has a great market share already, even before we partnered with them, of existing transit riders in LA County. And we're able to actually get real-time information about riders in the field, deploy surveys through the app, but also get information on where people are riding transit in real time. And that's really actually fed into our adaptation during the pandemic and to the future. And something that's coming in the future that we're currently working on is how we can actually expand our existing transit fare program, our TAP card and our what's called TAP Force, basically the account system in the back end, how it can be used not just for bike share or transit or on-demand services, but how it could also maybe be used for EV car sharing. The city of LA has a pretty extensive EV car sharing program. How it can connect to parking, how it can connect to potentially scooters and bikes that it might be private mobility operators. And we're currently working on this program and talking with a lot of different private mobility operators on how they can actually plug in to our TAP system. And that's all of the information I'm going to share today. My colleague Tam and my information is here if you have any questions to follow up with us, and I'm available to answer any questions you have.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Avital. Questions from directors as you're thinking of some. I do have one question, and that is, can you share with us some strategies that have been successful when it comes to working with the local municipalities, so that you're all on the same page, which I'm certain is not easy to do in LA County, but what are some strategies that have been successful for you?
Yeah, I think in my office, and we think about innovation, we like to pilot ideas, right? Let's try something with a willing partner. We have 88 cities. Maybe not every 88 city wants to do a bus-only lane. And we have a current, we just had a big initiative to adopt a new BRT visions and principle studies, where we identified 5 different corridors in LA County that might be good fits for a bus-only lane or queue jumpers or ITS improvements to speed buses through that corridor. And so I think it's about identifying that willing partner, going out to all of our stakeholders as we did, but then saying maybe the starting point is not having a queue jumper or ITS improvements for buses for everybody, but maybe starting with one jurisdiction, kind of setting an example, learning lessons from that pilot, and then maybe expanding it throughout the region. And we have a few bus-only lanes in LA County. We have one on Wilshire Boulevard that's kind of had a long-term success. It's been there for over 10 years. That we had to work with, the city of Beverly Hills, the city of Los Angeles, and work with multiple jurisdictions to implement that project. I think that taught us a lot about how we can work on multi-jurisdictional projects. I think right now we recently implemented a bus-only lane on Flower Street in downtown LA that we had a lot of success with, that we did as a pilot at first. We did a big marketing campaign and shared on social media how great that how great that bus lane was, just speeding a lot of people through transit, through congestion really quickly. And I think from that pilot, we now have a little bit more traction in terms of, well, maybe we'll try this idea out. Maybe we can do improvements to speed up our buses in our cities.
Thank you. That's very helpful. And speaking of having to work with other partners, who are some of your important supporters when it comes to strategies and initiatives? Who have you relied on, or who have helped you move the ball along? Oh, you got muted.
I think it's about, the way that we kind of do our engagement strategy is working, with all of our stakeholders throughout LA County, but then again, identifying, those willing partners, cities that may be struggling more with congestion than others, and trying out pilots, testing things, iterating. But I think, we've had a lot of success recently working with the city of LA to kind of iterate and test some ideas around bus-only lanes, but also the city of Santa Monica has kind of done some testing and iterating around that. So I think it's finding where you can try something out, but then getting broader support from that.
Thank you. Any other questions from directors?
I have one, Chair Gore. I get, as you were going through your slides, Avital, you talked about there being competition from private operators, Uber particularly, right? And as those kinds of companies like edge towards being actually profitable finally, I think that sort of cements them as being a competitor forever in the against other microtransit programs. And I'm just wondering if you foresee a future where a partnership with a company like that, where basically your agency provides vehicle or driver type options within the Uber app, would save you the trouble of having to be a competitor for all things, right? If you could go on to Uber and say, I need a 7-person vehicle to take 6 of us someplace, that's not something that's generally available on Uber. Or if you wanted to define that it had to be a ride in an electric vehicle, that was then a driver and vehicle that was provided by your agency, by LA Metro. I mean, I guess I'm just generalizing, but do you see a future where there's partnership opportunities instead of competition?
Yeah, I think we already see there's partnership opportunities, because we're testing and iterating on our own microtransit. But this idea of Tap Force, of basically we have this opportunity where we've actually been doing some outreach right now and reaching out to Uber and to Lyft and to the scooter companies Spin and Lime and Bird, and talking with partners like Via and Rideco and saying, hey, can you, we've developed basically simple kind of ways to connect through APIs into our backend systems that just basically take a little bit of software development on those private partners. But the payout is potentially seeing how we might be able to subsidize rides in a more equitable fashion, right? Right now, particularly during the pandemic, Uber and Lyft rides are, I've been noticing, actually more expensive than ever. I just had to take a ride the other day on an Uber, and it was like $15 to go 7 miles, more like a taxi cost, which is not a bad thing. I think it's getting towards the real cost of transportation. But I do think that they are great tools, right? I often ride transit somewhere, I ride to work, but then getting back maybe because I stayed late for dinner in downtown LA, but I don't want to take transit home because it's late and I have to walk home from the station. So I think that there is a partnership and the tools work together in the toolbox. And I think through technology, we're looking at how we can integrate, because we want to make sure that if we are partnering, we're partnering in an equitable way where we're offering our potentially low-income riders maybe a higher subsidy than others to ride those services, and that those services are being deployed in an equitable way, making sure that there's lots of questions about ADA accessibility for Uber and Lyft. And there's questions around, how do we encourage shared rides?
I gotcha. Yeah, no, I asked because, public transit is inherently subsidized, and it seems like you'd be a natural partner for
Equitable
making
as they
those
can get.
services equitable. Yeah, very good. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right. Well, we really appreciate you taking your time this morning. It's really helpful to see all the work that's been done. I grew up in Los Angeles and took the bus as a kid from high school, and I was actually surprised that when I moved to the Bay Area and then up here into the Sacramento area, that there weren't as many robust transit systems in other areas. And that was, 40 years ago when I used the bus in Los Angeles, and it's changed tremendously. And it's really great to see all the different innovative ways y'all are looking at how to redress transit, because that's one of the things that we need to do as well as the regions. Really appreciate your time this morning. All right, let's see, time for reports. And I want to do a brief report out to you all. First of all, we had an ad hoc committee of Vice Chair Jennings and Director Saragosa and myself to follow up on our Executive Director compensation and evaluation process. Our committee had an initial meeting with James, and as requested by the board, we discussed conceptual ideas for providing a non-salary related additional support and benefits to James. And we'll continue those discussions and report back to the board likely in August with potential board action in September. We also discussed the retention of a consultant to assist the board in expanding and refining the Executive Director evaluation process, both to benefit the board and James as not only this next evaluation process, but in the future. So we're working with our county council, or sorry, general counsel, we're not with the county, Kirk Trost, will help guide us through the procurement and implementation process. And we'll provide the board with a full report on our activities likely in August. So if you have any questions or additional input for the committee, please contact me directly. I would really appreciate that. And then as we've been talking about next generation transit, I'm really excited because in Placer County, we are kicking off microtransit in Lake Tahoe. My guess is that many of you go to Lake Tahoe and enjoy some of your summers, and it gets very crowded in the basin. So in conjunction with the Tahoe Truckee Transit Agency, TART, we are kicking off free microtransit in the basin. You are able to download an app, and it's called TART Connect. You can download and get from your hotel to, say it's Garwoods, and you're looking forward to having dinner and a Woody and want to get back home instead of getting on the roads, you can contact microtransit, and it should actually get to you within 15 minutes. So that is kicking off next week. And I encourage you to share that information with your jurisdictions, with your residents, because most of the folks come from this region up to Lake Tahoe. And once I have a video, I'll share that with you all, and perhaps you can share it with your residents as well. Do we have any other directors who would like to make a report before I move to James's report?
This is Sue Tacker from Caltrans. I just wanted to thank all the local agencies, the first responders, and SACRT for their assistance over the past weekend for the 99 project that we had road closures on. It was a huge success. And it was a success because of all of your efforts and reaching out to your public and putting on your Facebook feeds that to avoid 99. We were able to deliver the project a few hours early, but it couldn't have done without the help of all of you and SACRT, who provided free light rail rides to our passengers. And just wanted to say thank you to all of you for your support and appreciate that. We have the I-5 project going on right now, and apologize for the delays, but it's going to make a better system for all of us. So thank you for your patience.
Can I just do a very quick comment on that? As someone who lives 3 blocks from your 12th Avenue off-ramp and right off Franklin, you guys did a great job. You did a great job messaging it, getting the word out to people, setting expectations. And so I just want to say congratulations and thanks for getting it done early.
Thank you very much for those compliments. Like I said, it's not just one person or one agency, it's all of us together. So appreciate your support.
Thank you. Director Guerrero?
Hi, thank you, Chair Gord. I just wanted to just announce that West Sacramento adopted our final mobility action plan. And so it's been a long process for us here in West Sacramento. And it does achieve our goals in addressing, climate change and also establishing a more cohesive mobility around the city, and looking forward to working with all of you as we continue to expand on this effort.
Thank you. Any other reports from directors, Mr.
Yeah, just one quick thing for everybody. I'd like to invite you all to shake off the COVID blues and come to Folsom for the 4th of July. On the July 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, the Folsom Pro Rodeo is back. So please join me. I will be slinging drinks at the VIP bar, and tickets are available on folsomprodeo.com. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's always a good time.
It's great.
I have my tickets, so I will be looking for you.
Awesome. It's great fun. And legal fireworks every night of the rodeo. So
Wonderful. All right. Then we have a follow-up. Let's see, James Corliss, our CEO. Time for your report. Do you have anything to report out?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Gore, and great meeting today. I do want to I know we had to squeeze a little bit of that workshop on next generation transit, but I do want to just make sure that we connect it back for you to the next generation transit initiative that SACOG and our transit operators are undertaking. That is winding up, winding down. August, September, you'll be hearing more from that. Remember, we always try to do workshops in advance of things that you're going to be considering. One, of course, is the future of transit in this region, but in the near term, there are also going to be some funding opportunities that the board has also acted on for some of the discretionary shares of transit funding to seed some of these pilot projects and to truly support our operators. In particular, I was really struck with Patel's presentation on connections to speed and speeding up our transit vehicles. One of the best ways we can get actual capacity and get passengers and customers back on those buses, user experience, and also just the pilot projects and innovation. So do you want to make sure you understand that is coming back. A couple other quick things. We have a mega region working group. Our second working group of the year will be meeting next Friday. Chair Gore, you mentioned the Placer County microtransit. This working group is going to continue to hone down a list of some transportation investments and mega regional priorities that we can agree on with the Bay Area and San Joaquin County that we can carry forward really to the state level and the federal level for funding opportunities that unite and connect the mega region in a better way. Will be actually that may be kicked off by a keynote from John Robert Smith, Chair of Transportation for America, former Chair of the Board of Amtrak, former Mayor of Meridian, Mississippi, and somebody who has really spent his life on regional passenger rail connections, which are, I think, more important than ever as we begin to open back up. And we have a lot of people trying to actually get up and down the 80 and 5 and 580 corridors. A little nervous about how that's going to shake out. And finally, last but not least, we had a great discussion earlier on Green Means Go at the state level. I do want to remind you, we have federal advocacy consultants under contract now, and we're working very hard to actually shape the federal transportation reauthorization bill, if there is an infrastructure bill, and really trying to get some opportunities there for Green Means Go at the federal level. in addition to all of the other transportation investment we hope will come to this region and others. So stay tuned on that. I don't want you all to forget there's going to be some hopefully important updates at the federal level. So with that, as you know, as Chair Gore, you announced at the beginning of the meeting, the board does not meet in July. So I hope you get some time off. I hope you get to either unplug or see family, as I'm doing right now, which is kind of a remarkable thing after a year and a half of my kids not seeing their grandparents. And with that, I conclude my report.
Thank you, James. Appreciate it very much.
Through the chair, if I might.
Yes.
Quick question for James. James, I've heard that at the recent TCC meeting, SACOG's promised to do an analysis of when, where, and how much the state of California intends to return to work. Could you flesh that out for me? And is that something the SACOG plans to do?
Thanks, Director Joyner. Yes, I've sort of circled the wagons there with Mike Lucan and Woody and our TCC transit team. We are going to do what we can to understand the state's plan to reopen. How far we can get, how successful we can be. I don't want to overpromise. It is very difficult right now. We have made a lot of inquiries already. I have myself. I'm going to shock you by saying there is not a coherent plan that we understand to date. And it seems to be quite diffuse. And it seems to be something that has not yet been figured out in terms of a planned reopening, a staggered reopening, a hybrid model. So we'll do what we can. I do not want to overpromise this. I've heard it kind of called a research project, but I'm not sure how deep we can go, but we're certainly going to be persistent to try to get an early understanding, right? So that our transit operators can understand how they can plan their return to service for express bus and commute bus, which, as all of you know, are kind of somewhat sitting idle at the moment in hopes of, and what we don't want to do is reopen that service or introduce that service without the passengers, without the riders, and have to actually curtail it once again. We're very aware of that, and we will do what we can as much as anybody can actually understand the state's plan.
Fair enough. So does it look like it's going to be a department by department type of reopening, or?
It could be. It could be. You know, I think, look, as we started the meeting and Chair Gore was talking about, I think it might be potentially a more decentralized agency by agency hybrid, schedule, right? Don't forget, as I'm sure you all won't, that this is also tied up very much in terms of return to work, but negotiations with state workers, benefits. So we'll do what we can. You have my promise that we will do what we can. I don't want to just overpromise that we will suddenly, we'll open the envelope and give you the answer anytime soon.
Okay. I appreciate that. It's just, as you know, it's really important to our revenue projections moving forward. So, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair Gore. I just wanted to weigh in on that, Director Joyner, your question. As many of you know, I work under the Resources Agency, and so the latest briefing that we had is that if you can continue to telework, keep doing it. And they are working, Cal HR is working with the different departments and unions to work out all of those things first before they roll out a plan. But at least from a Resources Agency perspective, everyone's encouraged to continue the telework and then start investigating plans on how to do some hybrid form of telework, physical workspace. So that's the information I have.
Thank you. That's helpful. Appreciate that input. All right. Well, if there is nothing else, the rest of the items on the agenda are receive and file, and I encourage you to take a look at those. And our next meeting will be August 19th. So we look forward to talking to you all on August 19th. Stay cool. Thank you everyone for a very good meeting, and we'll see you soon.